My friends, every time that I hear a bad drum mix, it's almost always the same reason. They aren't punchy enough, the bus isn't glued together, or the sample choice is really bad. And that's a problem when you have good recorded drums. And if you have bad recorded drums that are poorly edited, bad performance, see, like when you have all those things, it's really hard to try and make those compare to a performance of a good take, no matter how much editing you do. But a lot of the stuff we're gonna go over in this video, you'll be able to apply to good and not so amazing performances. So I think that it's gonna be helpful. Because believe it or not, there are some ways to tighten up a performance regardless of what the source material is. And I'm sure that's what you guys are all here for anyways, right? By the end of this video, you'll have your tips for fixing and mixing drums, and adding that sweet little sauce that they need to shine. Especially those transients, am I right? So what's happening, fam? Miami here with JST, and I think there's one thing that all of us can agree on. A bad drum mix is the easiest way to ruin a song, right? Like, bear with me for a second. If you have a guitar tone that kind of sucks, you can lower it down in the mix and let the bass take over in its place, right? Kind of push it forward, maybe use a little stereo widening. If you have a bad vocalist, you can do tons of vocal effects on it. Just find something that works for the person. But when you have bad drums and they sound like trash, what can you really do? There's nothing. Because I can't name a single mix that has terribly mixed drums that I was like, oh, I love how that sounded. Never. It's crazy to think about how many drum performances are trash, even when you have so many tools and samples out there to help you augment them from being bad. But let's go through some things that have been a staple for bringing the most out of drums. And I'm gonna start with gates. If you're someone that doesn't mix live drums ever or edit them, you can skip this part, although I will say there's a lot of information in here that I think is really important to know. Just letting you know. So when you're dealing with a live kit, regardless of whether it was recorded perfectly or not so much, you're gonna need to gate some of that bleed out. And the problem that I see happen a lot when somebody's trying to gate this is you start hearing that hi-hat and snare thing where you hear like a psst, psst, right before it hits on the snare, right? And that's no good. It's really annoying because they're getting played at the same time, so it finds its way to always sneak past the gate. So what you're gonna have to do is find a gate that has a filter on it and it can roll off some of the high end that you hear from that. So let me show you the difference between an all natural drum kit that was just played and then how it sounds once it's gated the right way. Now, this is typically my first step when it comes to getting my drum sounding good. Even if there is a little bit of sibilance or whatever, I'm not too worried because I'm typically gonna take a sample and throw it on top of that. And that's gonna help mask it for me, And the more I hear it, the more I'm gonna pull that real drum down in the mix so that it's not bothering me anymore. But for the sake of helping you guys really understand how this works with a live kit, we're not gonna use any samples in this video. And we're going to show how you would fix these things on a real kit. But these same thoughts can be applied to samples as well. So this way it's got a little something for everybody. And now that our drums are gated, we can move on to our next point. And I would say the first thing I learned when I came to LA, clippers. Where my basketball fans at? Anybody? No one? No one? All right. A peak clipper can be the perfect tool to start off with on your drum shells because it can bring the bite out of your performance or even if it's programmed. And some clippers even add harmonic saturation, and that's exactly what we need to help our drum shells transients stick out in a mix. So take a listen to these shells before and after they're being clipped, and I want you to notice that with the clipper, how much it's bringing it out front to jump at you, and at the same time adding a little bit of warmth. Now the drums sound really exciting and have a punch. And that's exactly why people like to go to clippers, because they always give you this kind of result when you use it right. But now that we've already started building something, we're going to continue with that with the next thing that we're gonna pull up, a Transient Designer. And one of my favorite transient designers is Transify. That was way before I worked at JST. The reason I really liked it is because it had different frequency bands in which you could deal with the transients. And on top of that, it also had a clipper, so you could just clip it and do that at the same time. It worked hand in hand. When we're going through this one though, I'm already using JST clips, so I wouldn't use that, because when you're using these plugins together or something like this, I'm already getting more control out of JST clip than just clicking a button, but I have been lazy before and just clicked it on Transify. All right, I'm gonna throw this on these shells and let's see what happens. Those are the fastest ways of taking your drums from this to this. And if you absolutely love what you're hearing so far, just want you guys to know that there is a bundle called the Transient Mixing Mastery Bundle from JST, and it's in the description below, so you can pick up a copy of that if you want. You know, it'll get your drums moving the right way. Things that focus on transients are really important because that's the #1 thing that brings your drums out when you're dealing with a mix anytime. It really comes down to shaping a transient the proper way. That's the key to making something punch through a mix. But if you're someone that mixes drums often, then you also know that the most important thing besides drum shells when it comes to mixing your drums is getting the whole sound of the kit from the room. And when it comes to that room, there's a lot of things we want to do, right? We want to annihilate it. We want it to crush. We want it to distort. We want it to be kind of weird and give like a color and a vibe, because that's where all the vibe comes from in drums. And that's whether you're using samples or you're using a live kit. It's just a way to get as much juice out of them as we can. So I'm gonna grab one more thing out of this bundle. It's a bit crusher. It's called Pixelator. So while we're using JST clip at, think of that more as like a sweet saturation, and think of Pixelator as an extreme distortion, you know, like something that's really going to mess up the audio, because that's what we want when we deal with rooms. We need something to give us that vibe and to give us that color. So let's listen to an example of before and after these rooms get crushed with Pixelator. Okay, and now that you see how interesting that sounded, let's bring in the rest of the kit and have those rooms at the right level, of course, and see how it sounds and the vibe that it gives with the kit. Just like that, we took a very boring drum performance and gave it a whole lot of personality. No offense to the drummer, by the way. But if there was one thing I could do to make these drums gel together a little more, I would take all these shells, I would bust them, and I would clip them one more time, just as a little bit added measure of gel. So let's mess around with clip on that bust and see if we can get a little bit more gel out of it. And there you have it, my friends. We just transformed an entire kit with just a few basic concepts of understanding of what the drums needed. We went over gating, clippers, transient designers, distortion, and color. And when you use these the right way, you totally get a leveled up drum sound. And I know there's a lot of people watching this that are probably like, man, I wish I would have seen this done with samples. So what if I took this same drum performance, right, and we did another video about it, but we put samples on and I kind of showed you how I would go about picking the right sample for the song? I think that would be a lot of fun. So leave that in the comments and we might get to that one. So do you feel like you learned something from watching this? Are these all tips that you typically do in your mixes when you're dealing with drums anyways? Leave it in the comments below and I will chat with you fine people like I always do. If you're an engineer on the come up, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, you only have to do it one time, and tap that bell for notifications so when a video drops, you know the location. Until next time, my friends, later.